I'm not going to introduce you. Mike Barnes is. Keep my hands clean.
I'm glad to be recorded. I was asked tonight to do a debate, but I did receive a call today from Gina Sorrentino. She made a commitment back in January and I think there's some of our other elected officials that are at the Boys and Girls Club fundraiser or something tonight. I guess I wasn't up on all that. So she wasn't able to make it. I knew this was like put together at the last minute or whatever. Tonight I have the honor of introducing Adam Greivell. I worked with Adam for 2 years on the Central Committee. He chaired the Central Committee. So I'm going to let you come on up. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I guess we'll just take questions from the audience since it's not a true debate.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Look at this ugly sign. They even spelled my name wrong. Just kidding. I made it myself. Is there a microphone? Does it matter? Can anybody,
There was one up there.
everybody just hear me?
Adam, Mike's on the table there if you want it.
All right, fine. Is that better or worse?
Sounds good.
Good.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
it.
Tell me if you can't hear me to put it closer to my face. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge Eric Van Buren is here. He's running for Maryland Senate as a Democrat against the incumbent Paul Quarterman. And Mr. Van Buren has made some very negative videos about me, and I appreciate it. And I do think that he's got some courage to show up at a Republican club meeting. He was here at the sheriff's debate. He's engaged respectfully. We disagree very strongly on a lot of policy points, and that's okay. I'm really happy to have the ability to engage with people professionally. And, well, you'll hear a lot about that tonight. So, you know, I got some notes. It's only 3 pages long. It doesn't mean we'll get out of here before 9:30. I talked to April Parrott a week or two ago at their Republican Women's Club meeting, and she didn't even know that I was running, so I told her, you know, this is why I'm running, and she got bored and said, you know, maybe you could condense that a little bit. So I have trouble getting to the point sometimes, so I'm warning you in advance. But we got a problem here in Washington County. My name is Adam Greivell. I'm running for state's attorney for Washington County in the Republican primary. The election is June 23rd. We've got a pretty serious problem, though, because we have a candidate running as a Republican in Washington County, deep red Washington County, for state's attorney, who voted for Barack Obama, who allegedly had a sign on their property supporting a Democratic candidate in a recent election, who just today was in a courthouse downtown Hagerstown making plea deals. This person, I'm told, doesn't even want to be state's attorney. This person was arrested for DUI. This person has been charged, found to have drug paraphernalia on their person and charged for it. Why would a person like that want to run for state's attorney? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly why. If you figured it out, you're pretty clever. That's me. Okay? I'm the guy who voted for Obama in 2008. I didn't even realize it. I wasn't even registered to vote, apparently, until 2008. I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1979, Washington County, Maryland. And after I came back from law school, moved back to Hagerstown, apparently that's when I decided to register to vote, and I registered as a Democrat. I felt myself to be fairly independent, but I thought, you know, I got to have a say in a primary probably, so I'll just pick a side. So I picked the side that I felt aligned with what I believed in. And I voted for Obama in '08 because I believe the message of hope and change. And I believe that we have a country that's broken. I believe that we were taught, maybe I was the last generation that was taught this, maybe not, but I remember being raised, being taught what America is. You know, the land of the free, the home of the brave, where law means something. We're a country, a nation of laws, of the people, by the people, for the people. Nobody's above the law. And what I saw coming out of college, going through law school, was something that was broken. So I bought into the hope and change message. And in 2012, I voted. It's harder for me to say this than it is I say I voted for Obama. I voted for Mitt Romney. I don't like the guy. I don't necessarily know why. He never struck me as that interesting of a character or that solid of a character. But it was a protest vote. I felt that Obama wasn't doing what he said he was going to do. And by 2016, I was sitting in the Broad Axe having lunch with Erica. Erica Johnson's there, my former law partner. And I just whipped out my phone and I changed my registration to be a Republican because I wanted to vote for Donald Trump in the primary. Way before, there was like 19 candidates, I think, in the Republican primary, and everybody thought he was a joke. That's the man that I chose to switch my party to be a Republican to support. I'm proud to say today, I'm not out in the world, MAGA this, MAGA that. But that's a person who had a message that I thought I could support. There's a lot of imperfect people in the world. And I believe that when we work together to find strengths in each other, we can accomplish an awful lot. Mike, we were on the Central Committee together in my first year there. That's the Republican Central Committee for Washington County. My first year there was a challenge. And there was a lot of discord and a lot of infighting among the committee and factions between the committee and the club. And we didn't get hardly anything done that year because we were all busy fighting. It got to the point where at the end of that year, nobody wanted to be chairperson anymore. Usually, the chairperson is, selected at the beginning of the 4-year term, and they just ride it out, and they don't even bother changing. But technically, the bylaws say you have to vote every year on your officers. Nobody wanted to do it. I was the first person that was willing to say, okay, if you want me to do it, okay? I'm not a political animal. My wife hates that I'm running for anything. And I never thought I was going to run for anything. But I took my role as the chairperson of the party as one that required us to find our commonalities, as one that required us to find the strengths in each other, to try to bridge that gap between the rift that was going on between the club and the Central Committee and the members within the Central Committee. I'm sure I contributed to some of the chaos. I feel very strongly about things sometimes. But anyway, what's this got to do with state's attorney?
But don't forget all the free work you did for the party.
We'll get there. Because I think,
Is that page 3 or?
so it might be. Some of you people probably, in the room, most of you probably already know who I am. Some of you probably don't. Some of the people who might watch online definitely aren't going to know. And I'm just going to say, you know, you can turn that camera around, Levi, if you want, but there's like 30 people here. The Adam Greivell who ran for circuit court judge in 2022 would have been depressed. I threw a big party down in Sharpsburg, and like this many people showed up, and I was depressed. I now know that this is par for the course. This is what happens. The sheriff's actually got about 100 people here. It was great. But this race is a down ballot race. Why does anybody care? Why should anybody care? What is a state's attorney anyway? Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Nobody even realized they were elected. Except for the people that are real diehards like you guys. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background because I think some people who might not know me might want to know what business does a person like me have being trusted to run a key piece of government. None. I got none. Okay? No experience. Never ran an office larger than a few people. There's someone out there spreading a nasty lie that I've never done a jury trial. That's false. I have done one jury trial. And I might say that I exploded the first witness to the point where the judge had to declare a mistrial because I kept comparing his false testimony with the transcript of a testimony that he had given in a prior piece of the case. So that's my one and only actual jury trial experience. It was a criminal trial. I'm mostly a civil lawyer. I mostly do litigation. I've always done criminal litigation. I'm not a high volume criminal practitioner. My cases are generally long and complicated cases that nobody else wants. We had a joke that Erica can testify to, that there's a dent in the universe, and all the garbage that nobody else knows what to do with ends up at my office, and I just can't say no. And that, you know, we're all human, and we all make mistakes, and hopefully learn from mistakes. And one of my limitations is always wanting to please people and make people happy, and therefore saying no is kind of hard for me. And I have become overwhelmed at times with all the cases that I have, all the clients and all the obligations that I have. And so learning how to say no and to protect my time has become something that I've focused on for the last several years. And so I don't know why I said that. My experience. I have been, all right, who I am, let's start there. Born and raised in Washington County, born and raised in Hagerstown, the old Washington County Hospital. My mom is there, the blonde lady facing this direction at the table. My dad is there to her left. I was born and raised in Hagerstown, lived here my whole life, lived on Broad Fording Church Road for a long time in a double wide trailer that was actually pretty nice, you know, at the time on 27 acres of land that my dad bought up, and we had a pretty nice time there. Then we moved to, you know, a neighborhood a little bit later, and I went to Morgansville Elementary, and they tore the school down without even asking me. And then I went to St. Mary's in the 4th grade. My mom said, you can do like a 2-week trial and see if you like it. And after a week, I said I hated it. And they said, too bad. You know. So I was stuck in St. Mary's through the 8th grade. And it did me wonders, actually. It was a good school. I went to St. Marie Goretti after that. And my parents worked real hard to afford to send their 3 kids to school. And they tore St. Marie Goretti down. They never asked me about it. And I went to Hagerstown Community College. Took 3 years to get a 2-year degree. I worked all the way through it. I got a 4.0 in administration of justice. My mom was the director of training and membership at the American Jail Association for 13 years or so. So I had some cool exposure to the justice system in that regard. I went to University of Baltimore to finish my bachelor's degree, and I studied criminal justice there. And while there, I took an interest in the law. Took some philosophy classes and, sort of guided me towards the constitutionalism, constitutional thinking and reasoning and philosophy, which is really, the law is philosophy. So 2002, I applied to law school, and I had one of my professors was a Harvard law grad, and he wrote me a great recommendation. I'm thinking, first tier, baby. I applied to Harvard, Cornell, University of Colorado at Boulder, which was a top tier school, and then Dickinson was my safe school. I knew I'd get in there. Nope. Dickinson waitlisted me. Cornell rejected me. University of Colorado at Boulder sent my application back unopened because I was late. And so I was waiting for Harvard. And Indiana University sent me a thing saying, you want to apply here? And I don't know. Applications are kind of expensive. We'll waive the application fee. Okay. Never even heard. I know I've heard of the Hoosiers, but I didn't really realize they had a law school. Turns out it's a pretty good one, top 25%. And I graduated University of Baltimore, magna cum laude, so I was slipping. I only had a 3.83 or something. And law school kicked my butt. Was more work than I ever knew school would involve. I used to just show up and get by. Okay, who cares? What's that got to do with being state's attorney? Well, I had to access a different part of myself to get through law school, to actually buckle down and do the work and do stuff I don't want to do, because if you don't do it, you don't get through. And I had a 3.01 in my first year, and if I had been just below 3.0, I would have lost my little bit of a scholarship that I had. And I graduated Indiana University in the top 42%. It makes me feel better to say 42%, better than saying top half. But it still pains me that 42% of people did better than me. And I couldn't find work. I passed the bar right away. My first job out of law school was at Starbucks in Ellicott City, serving coffee, $7.25 an hour. I was supposed to be a barrister, but I became a barista, and that was what it was. It was a tough economy in 2005 for lawyers. There were 1,100 lawyers that swore in the same day I swore in, and I promise you there were not 1,100 lawyer jobs waiting for brand new lawyers who have no idea what they're doing. So I sort of scraped away and found friends and associates that were lawyers that would just give me little things to do, help them answer interrogatories or draft motions or something, and they'd pay me 20 or 30 bucks an hour, which was a huge bargain for their clients. And I got a little bit of exposure here and there, and ended up settling and working at a very, very small one-guy law firm in Pasadena. I married a Baltimore girl when I was in the middle of law school. And so when I finished law school, we moved to Howard County and Anne Arundel County. We lived there for 3 years until 2008. I had our first son. My wife and I have been married. It'll be 22 years in May. We have 3 kids. They're 18, 15, and 12. I moved back to Hagerstown in 2008 because everything was way too expensive down where we were, and Mom and Dad were close, in Hagerstown, and we thought it was important to have our kids, close to family, so we came to Hagerstown. And I've been back here ever since 2008. I was already a lawyer for 3 years, and I commuted for a year. And from day one, I've been litigating. I got a call from a fellow law student about 4 years in, telling me they went to a big firm and they were getting ready to sit in on their first deposition. I was like, are you serious? I've done 19-day-long circuit court trials already. You know, just a totally different world. I thought I was going to go that big firm, big money route and make hundreds of thousands of dollars right out of law school. But it just didn't work out for me that way. I had to work for $40,000 or $50,000 a year in a, small law firm that nobody's ever heard of. But I got great experience. Trial by fire. Just get in there and do it. You don't know what you're doing? Oh well, we'll figure it out. Okay? Adam, can you be state's attorney? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Trust me, bro. Right? We're fine. We're fine. But I will tell you, I think my track record proves that that's the case. I think my track record proves that I am a person that you can trust to put into a difficult situation and know, because of the man who's standing in front of you, know that because you know who this guy is, he's going to figure it out, he's going to do it. Okay? Mike, our lawsuit, I was the first person to sue Jared DeMarinis as the state's election director. In October 2023, we were just watching the State Board of Elections go over, on Zoom, the early voting site selections. And they did something really bizarre, and I thought something really unlawful. And they declined to approve the Hancock Early Voting Center. And we could see there was some behind-the-scenes stuff going on, and I noticed a lot of irregularities with the procedure. I've never sued the State Board of Elections. I don't know how to do it. Well, I looked up the law. You got 10 days. All right, 10 days. I mean, if people come to me and hire me for something, I might get to you in 6 months. Okay? This is 10 days. I don't have a paying client. I'm already busier than I can stand. But we had to do something because, it's one thing you learn. If you come around politics at all for any period of time, you start to pay attention and see things happen. And you realize this crap is happening every day. And there's not some watchdog ready to pounce on their 10-day trigger, or else they lose forever. Okay? That's not happening. But I decided that I would take the opportunity and fight the fight. So we found 7 fairly diverse residents of Washington County, and they agreed to be plaintiffs, and Mike was one of them, representing basically the city of Hagerstown. And we went within 10 days and filed a lawsuit in the Circuit Court for Anne Arundel County, where you have to file those types of election challenges, and we found at least 9 violations of the law, the Open Meetings Act, the election law article, et cetera, et cetera. And, were we going to win? My experience tells me probably not. When you sue the government, it's a heavy lift, and the judges don't like the government to lose. It was worth the fight, I thought. So we put it together on very short notice, and we got it filed. We filed an amended complaint. We got the county to join us in the lawsuit. We lost in front of the circuit court judge, who, I learned, no shade on him, but I learned that he was a lawyer who was appointed to be on O'Malley's transition team when O'Malley defeated Ehrlich in Ehrlich's second run. And so, it's tempting to say the fix was in, this was a Democrat guy, and, this is obviously, I was the chairperson of the Republican Party at the time, by the way. I had been made chair right around that same time. So I'm suing the guy that oversees me. That's scary, okay? It's scary. Our campaign finance reports were a nightmare because there's hundreds or thousands of cash transactions that have to be reconciled. Mike and I spent 12 hours on the phone one day fixing these things. And I'm suing the guy who's in charge of prosecuting me if we screw up. Okay? Was that stupid? Probably. But I was confident that I was advancing the cause in the right way. That pleading is so boring. You can read it. It's so boring. But you advance the cause in the right way because you believe in justice. And we lost. Circuit Court judge threw our case out, but that law gave us a fast track directly to the Maryland Supreme Court. Within 5 days, there's a direct appeal. It's very unique in the law. We get a direct appeal to the Maryland Supreme Court, and they have to hear the case. Usually when you go to the Maryland Supreme Court, you're asking, please, will you hear my case? And they 90+% of the time say, no thanks. Doesn't matter how good your cause is, they're busy, just like the Supreme Court of the United States. This one, they had no choice. They had to take our case. So we brought the county along with us, and I briefed it on a very tight schedule. There's all kinds of complicated mechanics in that election law. Just trust me. Nobody can follow it, but we did. And something crazy happened, like that I've never seen, and the Supreme Court judge who mediated our case said he never saw. But we argued our case in front of the 7 judges who wear red robes at the Maryland Supreme Court, by the way. And at 5 o'clock on the day that we argued the case, they issued an order saying, you 7 plaintiffs and the State Board of Elections, you have to go to mediation. What? We've already argued the case. Why are we going to mediation? I mean, so that just tells me, some people say we won. I don't know if we won, but we got them on the hook. We found serious problems with the processes that they followed, and enough of the judges on the Maryland Supreme Court agreed that you all better work this out because it's probably going to be too messy for us to just impose a decision. So we did. We worked it out. But that was a heavy lift. In 3 months' time, I put $75,000 worth of my attorney time into that case and didn't get paid a penny. The county, mercifully, without my request or even knowledge, brought a motion up that because I did all this work that they got to piggyback on, should they pay $15,000 to contribute towards that? And I watched it live on the YouTube or whatever when it happened, and I was shocked, and they approved it, and I gladly accepted their $15,000 contribution, which was totally gratuitous. And it helped, but I was already full-time busy, and do the math, 3 months of work for $75,000 is pretty much a full-time load all by itself, and I still had a full caseload of other stuff to do, so I was working pretty hard now. I've taken, I've represented 10 or 12 maybe or more lawyers. When lawyers get in trouble, or they get sued, or they have something going on, they'll call me. Maybe that's bad judgment on their part. I don't know. But I can tell you that I'm a guy, in fact, who other lawyers trust when they're in trouble. I have represented a number of police officers, law enforcement, correction officers, with regards to internal discipline matters, red flag laws, peace orders. We used to have the LIBOR, the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights trials. We don't have that anymore. I've represented law enforcement and corrections in those regards, and I've sued law enforcement. I've sued 2 sheriffs directly. I've sued the sheriff of Howard County and the sheriff of Anne Arundel County because they weren't doing their jobs on civil writs. And I went up to the Court of Appeals and I lost. Oh well, okay? But I engage myself professionally. I read the law. I know what it is before I file it. I never sign my name to anything unless I believe in it, unless I can verify it. So that when I go to court or when I see my adversaries out in the world, I'm always looking eye level, and I can look you in the eye, and I can look the judge in the eye, and I can look the attorney that I've conducted myself honorably, and I have nothing to hide. That's the only way that you can even try to speak truth to power. Well, Sean Porter disagrees. He does it with his pink thumb. Okay, what am I going to do? You guys getting bored yet? I think the people who know me and the people who don't, well, they can figure it out if they want. I believe I can be trusted. I know I can be trusted to handle this job. How do you sue the state board of elections? I don't know, but in 10 days we figured it out, and we did it. How do you file a RICO lawsuit against all kinds of government actors and private parties and lawyers and judges and clerks and attorney generals, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know, but you spend 1,000 hours figuring it out and making sure that nothing you file is wrong or errant or based on something crazy, and then you do it. And yeah, it takes courage, and yeah, is it stupid? Probably. Because you make enemies sometimes. You upset people that have power to take it out on you. Oh well. Okay? Oh well. Because I believe in the America that I was taught as a kid exists. I was on a cruise in April in the middle of the ocean, and James O'Keefe from OMG, O'Keefe Media Group, Project Veritas, tweeted that he was looking for a new general counsel. So, here's a little direct message, and he got back to me. He said, "Cool, we're going to do an interview. We'll just. So, on Twitter live stream last April, there's 150,000 people. He just decides to interview some people live. So I jump on there for a 6-minute little thing in front of 150,000 people on a cruise with no preparation, and we just chatted a little bit. He didn't offer me the job. But he asked me, do I believe in justice? I said, I do, but my experience with justice is that it's random, and that's very unfortunate. And I think we've all probably seen this play out, among your own friends and family maybe, but certainly in your community, and certainly out at large. What I mean is, everybody else does this thing that everybody knows is against the law, and then someone gets popped for it. And then you read about it, you're like, ooh, what'd that guy do? Man, it came down on him harsh. Oh, he did the same thing all these other people are doing. Why is it justice when it happens to this guy, and nobody cares when these guys are doing it? Right? That kind of stuff happens all the time. We built our country on the absolute certainty. This is the structure, the fabric of America is built on the certainty that we know we can't trust all the people that we will give power to. That's why we built our country the way we did. 3 houses and checks and balances and accountability. Did you know that, this is why I sued 2 sheriffs. Did you know that the sheriff even today is required to post a bond before he takes office? No. Nobody knows because nobody cares. It doesn't matter today. But why? Well, they had to post a bond going back into the 1600s, before we were even America, because it was just a function of how they knew people worked. You got a guy over here in Frederick County or Washington County, which way back then was Prince George's County, and you're the sheriff. You're responsible to enforce the law. But we don't really trust you. So you got to put up a big bond, and you couldn't be a sheriff unless you were wealthy, unless you already had a lot of money. and you put your money on the line. And there's a whole body of law built up around making sheriffs accountable. When the sheriffs don't do their job, you pursue an action of amercement against the sheriff, and the court makes the sheriff pay you. And then the sheriff could go after whoever else to try to make himself whole. But accountability was built into it. You couldn't get the job unless you had your own skin in the game. Judge Boone has always said to me, you shouldn't be able to become a judge unless you're taking a pay cut. And, now we see government jobs we think they're cushy places to go retire and you get it made. But it should be public service. Okay? So the sheriff today still has to post a bond, but it's ministerial. It's, $5,000 or $25,000. The county pays it. Nobody even knows it exists. It's purely ceremonial from a factual standpoint. And when you sue a sheriff, none of that even comes into the picture. There's a whole other regime of stuff built up that we call modern justice that takes the place of holding government accountable. We've spent the last 250 years as a country putting all of our elected officials and government servants, good and bad, in bubble wrap and in padded rooms so that it's impossible to hold them accountable. I have spent 20 years pursuing justice for my clients, and a lot of that time involves going against the government. And I can tell you that the law is already stacked against you. If you perceive a wrong done in government, whether it's the county commissioners or the town council or the state's attorney's office or the courthouse itself, if you observe something unlawful, nobody's going to do anything about it. And I'll talk about that in a second. But you can do something about it. You can go sue. Guys in Frederick, the Sugarloaf Alliance case or whatever, they sued the city of Frederick or Frederick County over hiding emails between the county and Amazon regarding the planned development of the big Amazon warehouse. And the county was hiding.
Data centers.
Huh?
Data centers.
Data centers, sorry. And the government didn't want to give them up. So these private individuals sued the government, spent years in court, and won. And the county was forced to disgorge the documents that they were hiding. And they spent $60,000 on lawyers' fees, the private individuals. Yeah, but guess what? That law allows you to ask the court to make the county pay you back. And you know what the county did, or the court did? They said, we'll give you $25,000. Okay. That case is famous as public information, public accountability cases go in Western Maryland, which means it's like one of the only ones. Okay? If anyone's ever made a document request anywhere, or anybody's ever watched open meetings that are supposed to be open meetings, but then the decision's already pre-cooked by the time that it even gets brought up for a vote, you think these guys aren't having secret meetings? You think government's not violating these laws all the time? Who's going to take them to court? When the Board of Elections doesn't follow the law on selecting early voting centers, if we weren't there watching like a hawk at that minute, it would have just happened. And it took enormous time and effort to go hold someone accountable. That is rare. The Sugarloaf Alliance case is rare. I've seen people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in vain trying to hold the government accountable. Okay? So the civil system is broken. It does not factually result in government actors being held accountable. What's this got to do with state's attorney? There's a Democrat that just hates that I post about the county all the time. What's this got to do with being state's attorney? What's this got to do with criminal law? Well, I believe the state's attorney is a position that is underappreciated for what it is, and it's underutilized by the people that hold it. Nobody ever runs, at least in most of the rural counties, basically nobody ever runs to challenge whoever's the incumbent. We work on this, system of, well, if you're lucky enough when there's a vacancy, we will select you as the chosen one, and then you get to be it. And that was the same reason I ran for judge, because that's how we're trained to believe the system is, but the real system is no, the people have the choice. Okay. So there's a couple things that I'm going to go into about actually being a prosecutor. About time. How long? 30 minutes in? Let's talk about being a prosecutor. I think plea deals, the way that they are currently done, are poison for the country and for your community. And I think it's a joke to believe that crime pays in Washington, or to believe that crime doesn't pay in Washington County. I think people have the perception that crime pays. Why? I don't know. Last year in April, I spent an hour talking with Gina Cerencione, your incumbent. A few weeks after I registered to run, I put a big billboard up on the Dual Highway. My billboard said, "Enough is enough." I crossed my arms and I looked like a tough guy. That's as good as I can do, looking like a tough guy. And I told her, I said, Gina, first of all, I respect Gina Cerencione. I supported her going into that office. I never wanted to be prosecuted. And I told her, I said, during this April phone call last year, I said, Gina, you might be factually doing the best job that can be done in every single case. You might be. The problem is, part of your job is making sure that we all know it. And that part has fallen through the cracks. Because what I see, and what you guys see in the newspapers, is someone stole $250,000, a treasurer from a youth sporting organization a couple years ago. This person was gifted a deal that they would put her case on a stet docket for 1 year. She would bring $50,000 to the plea hearing. She would pay $1,250 a month for a year. And after that year, they'd bring her case off the stet docket and allow her to plead guilty to one of the crimes with which she was charged. And then she would spend 5 years on probation and pay $1,250 a month for 5 years. And then she would complete her penance. Wait a minute, that's just barely half. I said, Gina, I'm a chump. Why shouldn't I feel like a chump? I borrowed $200,000 to buy my house in 2012, and I'm still going to be paying on it for another 10 or so years. I'm going to pay back way more than $200,000. I could have just robbed a youth sporting nonprofit and paid half. Like, where do I sign up? I represented, and I still do, Neil Glessner and Glessner Alarm Company, and this isn't Gina's fault, but the guy stole $1 million from his company, and the judge gave him a 99-year prison sentence and suspended all but a few years, and he got out after 2 years of serving time. And we're in this courtroom with like 100 people in it, courtroom 1, because this guy is up for violation of probation. And I'll never forget, you know, he got out and he was making $100 a month, I think, or maybe nothing, I forget. He was paying something or very close to nothing on his restitution. And he's been out for like a year. They're like, all right, you're violating probation. Mr. Glessner said, in front of the whole courtroom, something that stuck with me forever. He said, Your Honor, this guy has made a deal that I think an awful lot of ordinary law-abiding people in this courtroom would be very tempted to take. He's traded 2 years of his freedom for $1 million. I mean, like, you know, Mr. Beast said, you want to spend 2 years in jail for $1 million? Yeah, I bet there's a lot of people that would sign up. I'm kind of busy, I probably wouldn't do it. but I think a lot of people will be tempted. Crime pays in Washington County. That's the message, okay? Someone stole 60 some odd $1,000 from Morgansville Little League, no jail time. How does this happen? Someone shot 23 times at 3 deputies at their front door and hit bullets lodged into the house across the street. And they dropped the most serious charges at the state's attorney's office. And they recommend a sentence that could result in time served. And thank God, Judge Wright saw through that and said, no, no, no. You don't do that in Washington County. I don't care if the state's attorneys agreed that that would be an appropriate sentence. And she hammered him, as she should have. We need to stop training people that the law is meaningless. Okay? And when I talk about government accountability that bores everybody and it makes all the politicians uncomfortable, I seriously think that trickle-down accountability is a thing. And I'm going to give that term to Justin Holder from Kleinman. I think that's a real thing, okay? If our highest profile people get to act with impunity, why should anybody else think the law matters for them? If we see people arrested, I met with Hagerstown Police a few months back on a nuisance abatement issue. They're telling me that they're arresting people, convicting people 11 and 12 times for trespassing on people's property, just getting into their apartment, vestibules and lingering and shooting up drugs and whatever, causing a menace. And they're being convicted 11 or 12 times, and the judges won't even put them in jail. If nobody's ever afraid of going to jail, nobody's ever going to go to jail. Nobody's ever going to be deterred from committing crime. Okay? I don't have it out. I'm not, I was sickened to see the prosecutions against Donald Trump where politicians ran on a promise to prosecute that guy. That is not me. I make no promises to prosecute anybody, but I will promise you that I will search, investigate, find, and prosecute crime where it happens. Period. Doesn't matter if you're a friend or a friend of a friend or a politician. Gina has told me, and this is where I'm going to get to the main problem in our public accountability in Maryland. Gina has told me on the phone and in writing, and I've seen her tell other people in writing, she won't prosecute or even investigate any wrongdoing at the county. Period. County attorney, county administrator, county commissioners, county whatever. In writing. She won't do it. She thinks there's a conflict of interest. She thinks the county commissioner set her budget. She told me that she believes if she investigates the county, that they will reduce her budget and make it harder for her to prosecute people and keep your community safe. I don't know if she's been told that or if that's just what she believes. But if that's the truth, it's not going to happen on my watch. You can cut my budget in half, and I will work twice as hard. I already work 100 hours a week. If I work 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week at the state's attorney's office, it'll be a vacation. I do not fear retribution because I act with honor. I do not fear people telling lies about me because I know the truth. So, deterrence and plea deals. We're going to, there's specific deterrence, which is put the guy in jail so he can stop victimizing his neighbors or his family or whoever. Put the criminal in jail. Specific deterrence. That works for a while. And there's general deterrence, which is when people see what happens to people who disregard the law. Problem is, it's totally broken because everybody knows it's random. It's playing the lottery. If I get busted, I might go to jail, I might not. Okay? Plea deals. There's a systemic problem with it. Everybody says that's the way it should work, and that's the way it has to work that way. It's a necessary evil. 95% of cases are resolved by a plea bargain. And I want to draw a distinction between a plea bargain and a plea. A plea is when you tell the judge, I plead guilty or I plead not guilty. A bargain is when you have exchanged something. And in my view, justice isn't for sale. When you have a system that depends on 95% of the cases resolving by plea, what happens, one of two things happens in every single case. It's inescapable. A person either pleads guilty to the worst crime they committed that can be proven with lawfully obtained evidence, or they plead guilty to something less than the worst crime that they committed that can be proven with lawfully obtained evidence. Well, if they pleaded guilty to the worst crime they committed, that means they were overcharged because they dropped the top charge. I don't think the state should be in the business of terrorizing you with false charges to force you to make a horrible decision to plead guilty to something that you may or may not have done, because they're trying to hammer on you because they think you're guilty, regardless of what the law or the evidence says. It's leverage. It's wrong. Period. It's not America. I don't think that the people who plead guilty to the second worst crime they committed and are let off the hook for the first worst crime they committed, I don't think that's justice either. I think we send a message to everybody that worst case scenario, you'll only be convicted of the second worst thing you do. What kind of message is that? We all have families and kids and people that we don't want committing crimes. We want people to be afraid of consequences, okay? And I tell you, it's not that hard to send the message. Like it or not, when a judge out west got arrested and charged by DOJ because she was helping an ICE fugitive evade being apprehended through the courthouse back doors, and then another judge, like in the same week down in Texas or thereabouts, was harboring another illegal and giving him his AR to go off to the shooting range. When those two judges were prosecuted, I promise that a whole lot of puckering happened underneath a whole lot of robes in this country. I don't think it's happened quite enough. I think the judiciary is an especially insulated, protected class of people that is virtually impossible to effectuate accountability with. But the message was out there. It only took a couple prosecutions and people started seeing it. I think if, in Frederick County, if you get caught driving on a suspended license, well, in Washington County, if you're driving with a suspended license, if you get your license situation squared away before you go to court, the prosecutor will throw the case out. Hey, you got your valid license, cool. It's just like that's the transaction. That's how it works. I went to Frederick County probably 10 years ago, 2 times in a few month period with 2 different guys. And first time I walk up to a prosecutor, hey, my guy's got his license, and he looks at me and says, okay. Well, what do you mean, okay? Well, you're going to dismiss the case, right? Why would I do that? He was suspended when he got pulled over, wasn't he? Well, yeah, but, that's how we, no, we don't do that here. Oh, okay. Well, I got a jerk prosecutor. Come back a few months later, same thing happens again with a different prosecutor. That's just, they decided to enforce the law. And now I know you don't mess around in Frederick County driving on a suspended license. In Washington County, it might not be a big deal, but over there it is. It doesn't take much to tell people the message, okay? I don't want to prosecute government officials for committing crimes on the Public Information Act or the Open Meetings Act. In fact, what I will do is I will have training because I want to help all these people comply with the law. I think your elected conservative Republican officials should be becoming public information heroes, not government stooges. To lie, cheat, hide, and delete public information which you have a right to receive is the law of the land. I'm telling you. There are very few people and agencies that make it a priority to be open and transparent. And when the opportunity arises to lie, cheat, hide, and delete, they will do it. Why? Because they're evil people. Wrong. Because we have trained them that that's how it works. We have government lawyers telling government officials, it's no big deal if you violate this or that act, because the Open Meetings Act, it's a $300 fine, worst case scenario. I've never even seen that happen. Never. No one is going to be held accountable. But there is a crime of misconduct in office, and it's a very simple one. And the Office of State Prosecutor exists to take care of this. Problem is, they get over 1,000 referrals a year, and in the last 3 reported years, you know how many cases they brought? Statewide? 5 cases per year. 5. And you know what the cases were? A register of wills took a $6,000 check that someone submitted to pay for their taxes that she put in her pocket. A police officer secretly recorded him and his lady having sex and put it on the internet without her knowledge or consent and paid people to watch it. I don't know why or how or what that does for anybody, but it's an obvious crime. It's low-hanging fruit. These 5 cases that the OSP brings, and they're always asking for more resources, they're the easiest cases. No shade on the OSP. I know that's a hard job. But there's all kinds of other stuff going on that they don't have time for. And your local state's attorneys satisfy themselves by saying, oh, you have a problem with government corruption? Let me introduce you to the Office of the State Prosecutor, who was created exactly to handle this type of thing. And then the state's attorney wipes their hands, never thinks about it again, satisfies themselves that they have properly delegated this problem. And they know that nothing happens. OSP, unfortunately, is where corruption cases go to die because they don't have the resources. They have concurrent jurisdiction. State's attorneys do have the primary jurisdiction to do all this. Fine. So I'm not afraid to do what has to be done in that regard.
Adam, do you want to take any questions?
I do. I think I'm done. Mike, you can pass the mic around if you want.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody got any questions for Adam? You, sir?
No, it's your jurisdiction. I would say this ice facility does open here every time.
Yeah.
When the ice facility opens, going to. But at any rate, so the weirdos come out protesting and causing trouble with the ICE agents. Being it's against the law to interfere with an officer in the law, will you as a prosecutor tell the police to arrest them? Is that in your jurisdiction, or would that be?
Well, I will work with the police to help them enforce the law in the way the law is. They're going to rely, they do rely on the state's attorney to give them advice and direction. We have to work together to build good cases, lawful cases, etc. There's things that some people think are crimes that I don't think are crimes, and I'm just going to tell people I'm not going to prosecute. There's things that I think are crimes that some people don't care about. I'll tell them I would like to prosecute them. You know, I think that interfering with federal law enforcement is a massively serious problem. It's massively stupid. And anyone who does that, you know, I'm not saying they deserve what's coming, but they know what's coming. and they should know what's coming. They should know that there's going to be force used to stop it.
I don't need a microphone. I'm quite loud enough. Your opponent, I noticed your opponent didn't show up this evening. Have you heard from your opponent today in any way, shape, or form as to why she couldn't make it to the only potential debate prior to the primary election?
I talked to her a week or so ago. I'm not styling this as a debate that she was invited to and didn't show up. I understand she had a scheduling conflict, and I asked the club to phrase this as a state's attorney forum or candidate discussion or something of that nature. I'm not going to try to play a game that she, was scared to debate.
Let me respond to that though, because I have spoke to her. And she did have a commitment tonight with the Boys and Girls Youth of the Year Award. And she committed to this event back in January. And we will extend the invitation to Gina to come in and make the same pitch. But she did have a conflict. And here's where we get in the real problem, folks. The Democrats have moved, in Annapolis, moved the primary all the way to June. Remember when we used to have the primary in September? And we had all year for the debates for the Board of Education, the county commissioners, the Congress. We're 2 months away. We got 2 more meetings before the primary. There's just not the opportunity. So, that is a challenge that we have.
And I'm going to say John, she did, to answer your question, she did reach out to me as well. At the same time you were texting me, I was on the phone with Gina, and she did make this commitment back in January. And to clear that up, that 12 hours, it was a simple little typo mistake of put a 6 in, it was supposed to be 5. We were off by $1. It took us 12 hours to find it, but we were off by $1. And I shortly thereafter resigned as treasurer and let somebody else handle it. I'm now the second vice chair.
And I resigned because I knew I was going to be running, and the bylaws say you ought to resign because there's a conflict of interest when you
should not shall.
It says you should resign because there is a conflict of interest. I take that sort of thing seriously, which is why I resigned in February, registered in March of last year.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Okay, we got one.
Oh, we got it.
Debbie?
I noticed on one of your posts on social media that you indicated that you were concerned about people making false statements to obtain criminal charges.
Oh, yeah.
And how that is not prosecuted.
Yeah.
The question is, why do you think it isn't, and why does it matter so much to you?
Thank you, and Judge Breeden. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's one thing I didn't get to talk about tonight yet. The integrity of our judicial system is in serious jeopardy. And I will do everything in my power to restore it because I believe in it. Without a properly functioning judicial system, we don't have a country. There was a Baltimore Banner article about pro se charges. We're one of the few states that allows you to go swear out your own criminal charges against somebody else. This is one of the most abused tools in all of government, I think. People go and write whatever kind of insane thing, and commissioners, which I think Your Honor served as a commissioner for a long time, saw a lot of insane things. And a lot of them get through, and they get past the state's attorney's office to prosecute. All of those things are sworn under oath by the person submitting them. As a person who's participated in litigation for 20 years, people lie in court all the time. People lie in the papers they submit to court all the time. There's no auto-enforcing mechanism. When you catch someone red-handed in a lie on the witness stand under oath in front of the judge doesn't say, come here, buddy, give me your hands, I'm going to cuff you right now, you're a criminal. No, it's not their job. They shouldn't be doing that. They're not prosecutors, they're judges. But nobody else then takes up the role. There's no police force to sit around and watch court testimony and see if people are lying under oath. It happens all the time. It happens with utter impunity. People file bogus, pro se criminal charges and terrorize people with these things. Put them under the threat of lengthy imprisonment based on nonsense. And I'm sorry, and you should have access to justice if you're a victim and the police won't do their job and won't go do whatever. That's an important tool. But if you abuse it, the message needs to be clear. You will be prosecuted. If you come to court and tell lies to gain an advantage in a civil case, you will be prosecuted. I will establish a perjury portal. I will make it easy for people to report perjury. If you show me the proof that perjury has happened, I will prosecute it. We will review every complaint and we will tell you we are prosecuting it, or if we're not, we will tell you why not. I will be the most radically transparent state's attorney in the state of Maryland. We will have a dashboard updated at least weekly with real metrics. Every case that is brought, every charge that is brought, every continuance that is sought, every witness that appears or doesn't appear, every outcome, every plea, every sentence. This will be updated weekly. You'll get sick of it.
In Montgomery County, there's only been a few cases of perjury prosecuted in the last 50 years.
Thank you all.
Anything else? Anybody got anything else? All right, if you would, take out your phones, open up your calendar to the 4th Tuesday of next